Again, there are thousands of protesters who have been carrying Turkish flags and pictures of the nation's founding father, Kemal Ataturk. They've been marching through the main thoroughfares down towards Taksim. They're all demanding the resignation of the Prime Minister, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And really today has again seen many violent clashes between police and civilians here in Istanbul and right across Turkey. And again, we've seen really the routine deployment of pepper spray and tear gas against civilians to quell the demonstrations. The area that I'm in now is Gezi Park, which is the scene that sparked the initial protests earlier this week. This is the area that's been marked for redevelopment for a new shopping mall. At the moment, it's a fairly peaceful scene. There are many thousands of people turning up this evening, but at the moment, a sit-down protest. And the one thing that I would say that is different from yesterday is that there's very much less evidence of the police activity that we saw that marked the violence last night. I've seen no police officers at all within the last sort of a half hour in my trip down here.
But given the fact that the police have withdrawn, has it remained relatively calm without them being on the streets?
Well, that could be the case, but again, it's still relatively early here the evening in Istanbul, and the scenes that we saw last night have shocked people around the world. The tactics that were being used by the Istanbul police, the tear gas, the pepper spray, it's brought criticism from human rights organisations around the world and also the US government. What we do know is that Recep Tayyip Erdogan gave a speech in Ankara earlier today where he did admit himself that there may have been excessive tactics used by his officers. But again, he said that there will be no negotiation with people that he described as extremists. And all I can say is that the vast majority of people out protesting here in Istanbul and elsewhere in Turkey are decent, law-abiding Turks with genuine concerns about the direction that the government policy is taking recently. But it's still relatively early here in the evening in Istanbul, and clearly events could take a different turn yet.
So what are they saying that their exact concerns are? Obviously, as we've been saying, this was sparked by a development issue, a planning proposal.
Well, it started off as a planning issue. As I say, I'm in Gezi Park at the moment, which has been earmarked for redevelopment as a shopping mall. As we know, Istanbul is bidding to host the 2020 Olympic Games, and there is a vast amount of money being spent in the city centre, in the Taksim and the Tarlabaşı areas of Istanbul, basically to upgrade the city ahead of the Olympics bid. But human rights groups and many residents here in Istanbul have been saying for some time that this is being used as a pretext by the government and the city authorities, basically to move low-income communities out of the city for good. And this is just one in a series of grievances that many ordinary Turks feel against the government. There's been a host of legislation that's been passed by Parliament recently. An example is the new restrictions on the promotion and sale of alcohol, but that's by no means the only example, which ordinary Turks say is an infringement of civil liberties and also runs counter to Turkey's declaration that it is a modern secular state with aspirations to join the EU. They see this as part of a creeping agenda by the AKP party under Recep Tayyip Erdogan to bring in much more conservative legislation in the future, much more a hardline Islamic approach, which they're very angry about.